coming in here, Peps? No, come here. Come here. Where? You care for that? Well, hi, Catherine. How are you? April, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you doing?
Good. I'm good.
That's good. So you all ready for your trip?
No, not yet. I will at 4 o'clock on Friday.
No,
I'm
boy.
last minute, so
That's good, right? You excited to go?
I am. Yep. Except for the long drive with my husband and the kids. My husband has no patience when he drives, so it's always fun.
He don't road rage, does he?
No, he just doesn't have the patience.
No. When I was a younger man, I was never pleasant when we were leaving. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Getting out the door. Oh, my stars.
Oh, that's him too. Yep.
I was miserable. I have these self-imposed deadlines that nobody would meet, and then I get real aggravated with everybody. Yeah, we're leaving at 0500, then so 501, I'm ranting and raving.
Yeah.
But through the years, my wife has broke me that bad habit. Yeah, much more much easier to travel with now. I don't know why that is. Hey, Maria, how are you?
I'm good.
That's good.
Cleaning up dinner dishes.
Tell Billy, since you're on this, he has to do that.
He
How
is
does
actually
one-
putting John to bed. So
all right.
on Wednesday, on the next day of class, he'll put him to bed for me.
All right. Just gonna tell him it's one of the love languages. Tell him to tune in, he'll learn all about it, right? So, yeah, it's a good one.
When he comes back down, then he'll hear.
Yeah. This is a pretty good study. Have you gotten the book, Maria?
I have not.
I think you want to
I
get
looked
it.
the other day and then I never completed it.
The funny thing.
I will. It's actually sitting in my Amazon.
I just went to download this book on my Kindle.
Yeah.
And I already have it. I downloaded it a while ago and never got to reading it. So that's awesome. Now I can read it.
That's good. Now, in a case like that, I've never done that yet. Can you return them? Does Amazon let you do that?
What's that?
If you have it twice, did you download it twice?
I downloaded it once. No, it just came up in my Kindle. I ended up searching for it and it said I already had it.
Oh, that's right. It'll do that, won't it?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, and Catherine will know, I believe you can get it at the library too. I know you get the audiobook there because I listened to that. a while back. It's actually pretty good. Audiobooks and me, I struggle sometimes to keep my attention in an audiobook because I'm always doing something. My mind seems to wander, but it was pretty good. So yeah, it was. The book is good. I think you'll get a little bit more out of the course with the book. Although I got to be honest, all I have is the book and the paper that I sent you. The what would they call that? Hang on. What do they call that thing?
Study sheets.
The interactive guide. Yeah, they don't have a small group version of this that I could find. I was gonna go for a small group and show a video, but they don't have that. At least I couldn't find it. But it's
I guess I
actually
should
pretty
ask
good.
Dad if he has the book before I actually buy it.
Yeah, it's a good book. They have one for the adults too. I read that one a while back for married couples, and it's good. And one of the resources, and I wanted to see if they have that for the adults. They probably do. Is they actually have a test that you can sit down with your child and try to help you to determine what their love language is. So we're not going to do that tonight, but I'll send that to you when it gets more of that time in the study. But I thought that was pretty interesting too. It asks a series of questions to the child that you ask them, and it helps you to identify what their language is. That was pretty interesting. Pretty good. Okay, who is Galaxy Note 20? I don't know if
Creeper.
that's-
Well, staying, sneaking up on.
And you, Billy?
I
said it's a Palestinian trying to sneak into the country.
I don't blame you. I'm in my office, man. I got food stashed in here. It's sad but true. You know that. So I got me a tin of here. I'll do some advertising. These are pretty good. Blue Diamond Bold. They're
Oh
pretty
my
good.
goodness.
I know. Do you think if I show this on Zoom, do you think that Blue Diamond will send me some advertising money? This is salt and vinegar. They got other flavors.
Maybe, but did you think he said? Did you think he said pistachio? He said it's a Palestinian trying to sneak into the country.
Oh, I thought you said got something out of the cupboard. Oh, man.
I was like, you're a day late and $1 short on that one.
He is, right? All right. What time is it? It's about that time. A couple more, I think, are going to come. We'll see. See how it goes. So there's somebody here in a Galaxy Note 20. Do we know who they are? And can you identify yourself, maybe?
Hi, Kurt.
Hi, who is this?
It's Ashley Shepherd.
Oh, all right. Your name didn't come up, so I wasn't sure who you were. Well, I'm glad you joined us, Ashley. You know, your little girl Veda, she's won my heart. You know that, right?
Aw, I know she loves Donna. I don't know what she's gonna do without her next year.
I don't know. She's a sweetie pie. I'm telling you. I don't think she can go with you when y'all move. I think she has to stay on the Eastern Shore. That's my hunch.
She gonna move in with you guys?
She could. If she can handle it. Well, let's get started. I hope not to take too long because it is 8 o'clock and my bedtime is 8:30. Just kidding. But I don't want it to be overburdened. So I appreciate you coming. I think more will join us as we go through the study. I hope you have the interactive guide that I sent you. There should be an attachment in an email. And Ashley, did you get that? Do you know? If not, I'll have to get that to you.
The printout of the 5 love language thing?
Yes.
Susie printed it out for me.
Okay, good. Because that may be helpful to take some notes in there and to get ready. I got mine all noted up. Then of course I have the slides. But I think it'll be helpful. If you get the book too, if you want to, I think it's a good read. It's not excessively hard, and I think you'll get more out of the course with it. You know, he gives illustrations that I probably won't use that are good. Well, hey, Dawn, how are you? Hi, Dawn. Well, let's go ahead and we're going to pray, then let's get right into it, okay? We'll get started and see who else will join. Father, thank you tonight for your goodness and grace, and help us as we look here at in this study that will help us to be better parents, help us to show our children love in a way that is more perceived and recognized by them. And Lord, I just pray you make this a profitable time for all of us. In Jesus' name, amen. So we're going to look at the 5 love languages. Can you all see that? It's up there, right? I'm sharing my PowerPoint. Y'all can see it?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go ahead and look at the, well, we see we get to go. There we go. You know, this is, oh, I forgot to do that. Oh, well, too late. I wanted to be able to make it where the second one didn't come up to you, saw the first one. But if I were to ask you, do you love your children, what would your answer be?
Absolutely.
How many think that that is would be the answer of probably like 99.9% of parents?
I hope so.
Yeah, I think it would be. Here's the second question I have to, if you were to ask the children of parents, do your children feel they are loved? And I hesitate to use the word feel, but it is the right word in this case. What do you think the percentage of children that feel they are loved? And I don't have the exact percent, it's not in the book. Would it be the same as the answer to the first one? Do all parents that love their children, do all their children feel that they are loved?
No. Probably
No.
about
It's probably way less.
60%, maybe 70.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the number would be. I'd just be guessing myself at that. But I am going to tell you a story because you know I am a storyteller, right? When I was a youth pastor, I was a youth pastor for 14 years in Wilmington, and one of the students had just graduated from our Christian school. He'd been there quite a few years from elementary on, and had graduated. And his mother actually was the church secretary. And she said something one day that just absolutely floored me. And the guy's name was Jeremy. And she said, you know, Jeremy never really felt like he was loved while he was in school. And of course, that bothered me, you know, obviously, because, you know, we want our children to think they are loved at the school, right? So, you know, I went and talked to him. I said, Jeremy, I said, you didn't feel you were loved? He goes, no, I did not. He said, and I thought it was interesting. When I was little and in the elementary school, I did. I felt like the teachers really cared about me and they really loved me. He said, well, as I went through the school, especially, you know, middle school, high school, I didn't really feel that the teachers really had that kind of love and concern for me. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think that the teachers, if you were to ask the teachers, did you love Jeremy, what would their answer be?
Yes.
Yeah, and let me preface by saying he was a good kid. He didn't cause any trouble. He got decent grades. He wasn't never a discipline problem. So it's not like he was aggravating or anything like that. Yeah, I think so. I think all the teachers would have said, "Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we love Jeremy. He's a great kid." But Jeremy didn't feel that, and I bring that out to say that there is a disconnect sometimes between adults and the children. You know, where I think the adults they love their children, and children don't always recognize or perceive that they are loved. And I think that especially can hold true as they get older. It's, you know, especially during the teen years, I think that can happen. I know it happened some in my relationship with my dad. And, you know, when I got through the teen years and looked back, I realized it was not a problem with dad. It was a problem with yours truly. But I think there is a disconnect there. So we're going to we're going to talk about love. That's what this is. This chapter is about. Love is the foundation of a child's relationship, and it is. So there are 2 types of love that are talked about, and it's true. The first one is conditional love. And, you know, of course, now the answers are up because I forgot to do that. But what is conditional love? It's okay if you read the answers I have up. It's all right.
I'll love you if you do this for me.
Perfect. I love you depending on blank, right? Depends on something. Okay. Let me ask you this question. Give me an example of that in a parent's life with a child, because believe me, I know I had them. You know, give an example of how a parent shows a conditional love.
Well, it could be as simple as I'll take you out for ice cream if you behave all day, right? Or
Absolutely. Right.
I'll you give them extra time, you know what I mean? I'll watch a movie with you if you behave, or you know what I mean? We use it as a trade-off.
We do. I think that's excellent. You end up using it as a means of trying to gain the behavior you want. Now, what does that say? What does that say to the child when that happens? If that, and by the way, there's always going to be some of that. Don't misunderstand this. But if that is the primary way of your showing love to the child, what's the child think? What does that read? What does that portray to the child?
That they only have to do something if they get a reward for it.
Correct. They have to behave a certain way or perform a certain duty. If they do that, then they have the love and the attention of their dad or their mom or both, right? So it's conditioned. So what happens if they don't do those things? How do they feel?
Angry, unloved.
Yeah, angry, unloved, right? As if they can't meet up to the expectation of the parent. Yeah, I'm amazed at how many children just sort of give up. Have you ever noticed that? If they can't meet what a parent expects, and if the love of that parent is tied to the expectation of the parent, and they can't meet the expectation, all of a sudden, man, they get depressed, they get anxious, they give up. So those are conditional loves. It depends on something. It's based on performance and often associated with gifts, rewards, and privileges for that desired behavior. So that's an example of that's conditional love. Then there's a second kind of love, and that's the love that we're going to focus on in this study, with love being the foundation of chapter 1, and that's unconditional love. So what is unconditional love?
Shows love to a child no matter what.
No matter what, right? There's some beautiful stories out there of that. I was just watching TV, and somebody committed a heinous crime. I think it killed somebody. And they had a little thing with the mother, and she had been through the whole trial with the child. The child's an adult now in his 20s, if I remember the story correctly. And when they interviewed her, they talked about, how what do you do? And she says, well, certainly. And there's no doubt he did it. There was no question of his guilt. And she said, first of all, let me just say that, I'm sorry for what he did. I don't condone what he did at all. But she said, when, I unconditionally love my son. Yeah. And I looked at that, I thought, that took an unconditional love, because, obviously you'd be embarrassed, you'd be humiliated, you'd be angered that your son did that. But yet she still chose to love him. And I think that's a very good thing. So unconditional love is show love no matter what, love regardless. And that's the example that God has for us, right? Can somebody, this challenge here, give me a Bible verse that would sort of show that, where God has an unconditional love for us?
John 3:16.
That's the one I was thinking of. It's the most famous one, right? For God so loved the world. There's not a condition on that. He just decided to love us. And, I look at that sometimes. It means he loves people that can be, good, upstanding citizens, but that means he loves the down and out, and he loves the most contemptible of people. And in some regards, he loves them equally, not because of who they are, but because of who he is. And that is unconditional love. Now, let me ask you this question. Give an example of how we show an unconditional love to our child. What are some ways we can communicate that we have an unconditional love to our child?
Just telling them we love them for no reason at all. And giving
Yeah,
them a hug.
exactly. And by the way, that's something that's okay to tell them when you do love them. I love you. I love you just because you're my son. I love you just because you're my daughter. And just so they know that there's not a hoop they're jumping through. It's just who they are, that you've chosen to love them. So we'll look more at unconditional love as we go through this. He brought up an example here in the book, and that's the next thing we're going to look at. And that's about the emotional tank of children. And I'm going to hit this pretty good here a little bit. But what is the emotional tank? I'm going to try to explain that before you even answer it. There's a book entitled "How Full Is Your Bucket?" I think that's the title of it. It's a great book. It's a secular book, but a fantastic book. And it gave the example of how we should always picture people as carrying a bucket. And our job is, after we interact with them, is to put more into the bucket instead of taking things out of the bucket. In other words, we want to be bucket fillers instead of bucket emptiers. Is emptiers a word?
No.
Bothered me.
It
Is it?
might be nowadays.
Well, it is now, right? But bucket emptiers. And the thought is this: that many times our interaction with people can be. Yeah, I'll give you an example. I had to go to the bank today, and of all days, I had so much to get done, and I waited about an hour and a half to do a 5-minute job. So when I wait an hour and a half for anything, I got to admit, my first thought is not, oh, let me just praise the Lord for waiting this hour and a half, and let me just be real pleasant and kind to this person I'm interacting with. And I was kind of aggravated. And I'm sitting there, and the lady was nice, and she was professional, and she was courteous. It wasn't her fault that I had to wait an hour and a half. And I thought, I was aggravated. There's so much to do, and I didn't bring my Kindle with. I normally would bring that with to read, and I didn't have it with, and I was kind of bummed about that. So a little bit mad at myself, and I thought, and I was glad I had a mask on because I didn't want her to see my facial expressions. And then finally, before it ended, I said, you know what? I said, this isn't right. You got to fill her bucket before you leave. And so, before I left, I went overboard to thank her for her professionalism, how quickly she got it done. You did a tremendous job. That's being a bucket filler. If I would have fussed at her about waiting an hour and a half and where were you at lunch, whatever, and got on her case, that would have emptied her bucket. And that same bucket is similar here to what Gary Chapman is indicating here with children, all people in general, but children for this study specifically. And that is that they have an emotional tank. And that's what he's saying here. Each child has an emotional bucket, and it needs to be filled regularly with unconditional love. And that is something that he's trying to indicate here. And we'll go into this a little bit later as we look at this. But there are so many reasons for this. And he says as to why. Number one, he says, children have a tendency to be able to reach their full potential if they're going through life with a filled emotional tank and not an empty emotional tank. He says it helps children to grow normally and to develop normally as well if they have a filled emotional tank. So he said, what are the benefits of that? And this is, did you ever hear the saying, you can't discipline somebody till they know you love? There's a saying, and I'm messing up the saying. Till they know that you love them. Anybody know what that exact saying is? Because I just messed that up. Well, I just thought of people don't care how much you know till they know how. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. But I believe you can put that into term of discipline and say, have you ever tried to discipline somebody that you had no relationship with? Think of the last time, if you have a boss you have no relationship with and they tried to correct you. What was your reaction to that? How did that go?
I've had it all around the other way where I was the boss trying to correct an employee, but it's not the best of things.
Yeah, it can be difficult, right? And what he's trying to indicate here is this: children in some ways are the same way. if they're not feeling, if their perception is not that they're loved and they're not secure in that love and their emotional tank is not filled, the discipline becomes more of a problem. Training children becomes more of a problem. If the emotional tank is filled, they're more likely to hear, from a different perspective what you're saying. Instead of it being like a real criticism, they view it as being you trying to help them. Instead of them viewing it as you trying to tear them down, they view it more like you're trying to build them up. So he's trying to indicate here that that emotional tank really does a great deal in helping in the disciplining and in the training of children. And he also said this: if your children have a full emotional tank where they just are filled with an unconditional love of parents, it says it'll help alleviate the problems of resentment in their lives. It'll help alleviate the problems of feeling unloved, obviously, problems with guilt or fear or anxiety or insecurity, if that child knows that they are absolutely loved. So that's what he's talking about here with the filling the emotional tank, was that, our children have to look at them. I always try to view people as they have the buckets. And I want to look at when I leave them, I want their bucket to be more full than it was when I came. And that's what he's trying to say here with your child, is you got to be certain that that child is feeling the emotional bucket is being filled on a regular basis. Then he goes on to say this. He goes through a list, I think there's 9, of obvious things that we need to be reminded about children. And, this can be so true. And, of course, with our own son, we dealt with it, but also in teaching with teachers, I'd always remind them when they came to me and they would, explain about a problem with a younger child, preschool or early elementary school, or even sometimes if they're teenagers. And I'd say, hey, first of all, let's remember they are children, which means they're going to act like children and they're going to have childish behavior that at times is unpleasant. And, middle school boys, oh, my stars, they just have unusual senses of humor. But, there is that childish behavior. If I do my part as a parent and love them, despite their childish behavior, they will mature and give up their childish ways. And, I remember one time I was talking to Donna's dad about something with David when he was just a little guy. And I was all concerned about it. He says, don't worry about that. I said, why not? I said, he'll outgrow it. And I said, really? He said, yeah, he'll outgrow that. And, he was right about that. Sometimes they just outgrow things, right? They just do. So he also says, if I love them only when they please me, conditional love, and if I express my love to them only at those times, they will not feel genuinely loved. This will damage their self-image, make them feel insecure, and actually prevent them from moving into better self-control and more mature development. Therefore, their development and behavior is as much my responsibility as it is theirs. And I want to tell you, I'm chasing this a little bit, but I'm going to say it. I've watched parents, and there's some parents that want to prove their love to their children. So they do so by, sticking up for them against any kind of authority, against anything that happened. And all of a sudden, they have that tendency to become the proverbial, helicopter mom, or the one who's hovering all over. And, I think that's a misappropriated way of showing love to the child. If the child messes up, they mess up. And, you let them own it, you let them learn from it, you let them grow from it, and you love them through that. You love them unconditionally. Don't go to their defense and when they do something wrong to try to show your love for them. Show your love for them every day. And then when they do something else that's wrong, you don't have to go overboard to prove your love to the child. The child already knows that. And I tell you, I've seen that so often with parents. They'll get all jacked up about their child with something that happened wrong, and they're trying to prove to the child that they support them and they love them. I'm thinking you missed it. You missed the opportunity. The Lord sent the opportunity of correction into your child's life, and you're so worried about trying to convince a child you're on their team that you forgot that there's a responsibility to help them grow and mature. And that's part of the thing to remember about children. Let me move on to my next one. I got off my hobby horse. If I love them only when they meet my requirements or expectations, they will feel incompetent and will believe it is pointless to do their best since it is never enough. They'll always be plagued by insecurity, anxiety, low self-esteem, and anger. To guard against this, I need to often remind myself of my responsibility for their total growth. Then he also said this last thing, if I love them unconditionally, they will feel comfortable about themselves and will be able to control their anxiety and their behavior as they grow to adulthood. And I tell you, I just say amen to that, right? So, we're looking at this and we're trying to understand the need for children. That love is foundational. It has to be an unconditional love. It has to be filled. Their bucket has to be full. Their emotional tank has to be filled, and that has to be on a regular basis. And one of the great times to do that, especially when they're younger, is when. Some of you have already done this tonight. When's a great time to fill that tank?
At bedtime.
At bedtime, right? You just sit right down with them and read some scripture with them, or a Bible storybook, whatever you may do, and pray with them and just love on them a while. Say, man, I love you. I am so, you just have that moment with them. And, it could be more, and obviously you need to add to that throughout the day, but those are the type of moments where it's an unconditional love. And, whatever you do, don't ever try to tie the word love to, well, I love you because, and guys, fathers do this to the girls. I love you because you're so pretty. Well, don't do that, because what happens if something happens to them and they're no longer pretty? It's not wrong to tell your daughter you think they're pretty or whatever, but don't try to tie that to love. Leave it be separate, because you want that to be an unconditional love. Because would you love them if they weren't pretty? Well, the answer is yes. Now, I know what you're saying is my daughter should always be beautiful in my eyes, and she should be. But I'm just indicating that you don't want to tie that to necessarily their appearance or their grades. If they come home with a great report card, you praise them for the report card. That's a wonderful thing, but you don't want to tie the word love to that. Man, I love you. You got a great report card, because then the child's going to think, oh, if I don't get a great report card, you may not love me. So, you want that love to be shown in an unconditional way. And bedtime is a great thing. What's other ways you can do that? We're talking about telling them now. We're going to talk about the love languages here as we go through this study. What's another way you can do that? Another time in the day?
Morning, first time that they wake up.
They wake up, you drop them off for school, right? I mean, I see parents do it all the time. That's a great thing to do. They give them a little hug and, hey, I love you. Have a good day. Any little thing like that helps that child's emotional bucket to get full. And hey, when they're young, enjoy it, because when they get to be teenagers, these could be frightening words to a teenager, right? At times. So they don't always respond, especially in public, as you would hope they would. So, that's something to enjoy, right? But fill the bucket. That's what he's talking about here. Oops. What is it? Oh, I'm messing up. What does your child need from you? Well, there are several things that children need from parents. They need shelter, obviously. They need food. They need clothing. They need unconditional love. It is their greatest emotional need and greatly affects our relationship with them. They need mental and emotional growth, and they need health. They need proper self-esteem. And, just talk about that. It's an interesting thing. Self-esteem is sort of something new from, I'm going to say, maybe the 70s on. We've talked about the 80s on for sure. But that self-esteem is interesting, because you don't always just be blowing smoke about that. If they do something good, you compliment them. And if they don't, you don't make it up. You know what I'm saying? You don't want them to become a narcissist, and you don't want them to get a higher evaluation of themselves than they need to have. A self-esteem is just where they have a confidence in whatever that God is going to ask them to do. They're going to attempt to do that to the best of their ability. And, hopefully they'll succeed, and maybe they won't. But either way, they're going to be okay, because they know that they have a family structure that loves them. They know they have a God and a Savior that loves them as well. So that's what he's talking about there. Security is needed for a child. Safety, obviously. Relational skills with others. You know, that's an important thing. And that's this is one of the benefits of school is you can have that relational skills try to be developed there. Any interaction with other children, other family members, other adults even are good. And it's good for little children to learn how to interact with adults and with older adults and so forth. And then the last one, boy, this one needs to be shouted in America right now. How about relating and interacting with authority? You know, I'm just going to say this, and I hope you don't hate me for it. But you know, when I was young, you know, we have these parents saying, "I got to teach my child to protect them from the police," and I'm thinking, you know, what I was taught when I grew up is, first of all, they're the police, so it's yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, and whatever they ask you to do, you cooperate. You know, that's just the way that went. You know, I mean. You know, I would never. Oh my! I mean, that was embedded when you're young, is a respect for authority, and you know, and how to interact with them to recognize that they're authority, and that's just you know, these are the things kids need. Now we look at this, we look at it and say, well, now what is the whole purpose of the book? Well, the whole purpose of the book is to help you and I as parents to love our children better, to help them to perceive the love that is in our heart for them. And how do we do that? Well, Gary Chapman has come up with what he calls 5 love languages, 5 ways to communicate love to your child. And we're going to spend the majority of this study. We're going to go through the 5 love languages, even how you discipline with the 5 love languages, how you communicate the 5 love languages, how you recognize and learn what the love language is of your child. And the first one talks about, and this is what we'll be talking about next week, is the love language of physical touch. And that changes obviously as they go through life and they go through ages. And I'll tell you some you know, examples I have of that from my youth pastor years with parents made heirs with physical touch, but it's a way to show love. And it's a love language for people, to give them a hug, to embrace them, to, you know, there's 100 of them we can look at. Words of affirmation, those would be words of praise and encouragement, and then quality time. For some children, that's their love language, is they just need time with mom and dad. And for some, it's gifts. You know, I got to be honest, that's one of mine. I got to be honest with that, and you know, that's because that's the way my dad showed his love to me all his life that way. And they were never big gifts because, you know, I grew up Pennsylvania Dutch, and it's interesting. Most of them were food, just so you know. Dad would always bring me food home. That's what Pop did. And then Mom too. So gifts can be part of that. Acts of service. That's one of my wife's love languages. And so, you know, she loves if I do the dishes, you know, that kind of thing. If I do the laundry, which I don't do all the time, I'm not going to lie. But that type of thing, she loves that. That's one of her languages that shows love. So that children have the same thing. So those are the 5 love languages that will help us to love our children more effectively. So I have 2 bits of homework. And you say, what, you're kidding me, homework, right? No, your homework is this. Examine how you show, demonstrate, and communicate love to your child or children. And if you have more one, write it down and look and say, hey, how am I showing my love for them? How am I demonstrating it? How am I filling that emotional tank up for them? How am I doing that? And then number 2 is this: set a goal to fill your child's emotional tank every day, to make sure they're getting the attention they need from mom and dad, that tank is filled, that child knows overwhelmingly that they are unconditionally loved in your home. So that's week 1, lesson 1. I don't know how many lessons this will end up being, but quite a few. But we'll get through the book. Anyone have any questions? So how many, just out of curiosity, how many have the book? Just trying to take a survey here.
I have it.
I have it on Kindle.
I have it.
Okay. So if you read chapter 1, which you may or may not have already, you may have read more too, but he gives 2 really stellar examples in there about how a child not understanding and perceiving that they are loved, how it can affect their behavior, from 2 case studies that he had. So if you have the book, it's worth going back and reading that and looking at that. It's interesting. My wife has taught for years in the elementary school, a variety of different grades. But you can see this in some of the children's behavior, and not all. Some children have issues, and it beyond what is not. It's not that they don't feel the love of their parents, but some of it is that. There's been great instability in their homes, or there's been great busyness in the home, and there's not enough where that child is feeling that. There's such a pressure sometimes as well for parents that they place in their children to perform to a certain level. And I got to be honest, I think Don and I both would admit that when Dave was younger, that was one of the things that I think we did too much of. We put too much pressure, and he couldn't reach up to the expectations we had for him. And it caused a resentment and a rebellion in his teenage years. And it was when he got expelled out of the school that he finally, I think, because we responded in a different way and were able to communicate to him how much we loved him, where he was able now to feel that, where it actually changed his behavior. And it was pretty quick, to tell you the truth, once we got that straightened out in ourselves with him, and it made such a difference in his life. And he's a great young adult today. I love him dearly, and a fabulous son. So that's your assignment. So come back next week and let me know how you made out with that, and we'll try to start figuring out which love language is the love language of your child. So I hope you enjoyed tonight, and we'll see you not next week, 2 weeks. It's going to be every 2 weeks on Wednesday night. So what is today? Today is the 12th, right? So it'll be the 26th. Oh, wait. 26th of May is the K-5 graduation, right, Maria?
Yes, I will not be on the Zoom if we have it.
Yeah. That's interesting. How can I do that? I don't want to go miss a whole turn. The 4 weeks would be too much in between. If we moved it up to next Wednesday, can I get all that work done by next Wednesday? How about if we did it on a Tuesday night? Would that mess anybody up?
No.
No.
Let's do it instead of the 20th.
That works for me.
Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
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 So let's say we do it instead of May 26th on that Wednesday. Let's do it on Tuesday, May 25th. And we'll go right into lesson 2, which I said is on the love language of physical touch. So we'll do it on Tuesday, 8 o'clock. Is it better time? Does that work better for you, by the way, at 8 than 7?
Much better.
Okay, it gives you a chance to get the littler ones to bed, right?
Yeah.
Maybe, sort of, kind of.
Maybe.
So, okay, well, listen, I guess we'll say good night then. Thank you so much. And we will see you on the 25th.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Go.
Thanks.